afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Herbst. I am president of American Jewish University in Bel Air. Today, it's a pleasure to welcome Ami Ayalon to talk about his new book, Friendly Fire: How Israel Became Its Own Worst Enemy and the Hope for Its Future. Ami, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And thanks so much for joining us from Israel late at night. Ami was born in Tiberias and served for more than 3 decades in the Israeli Navy. Much of his service was in the elite Flotilla 13 unit, roughly equivalent to the US Navy SEALs. For his service in combat against Egypt, he was awarded the Medal of Valor, Israel's highest commendation. He eventually commanded Flotilla 13 and ultimately the Israeli Navy. Following Yitzhak Rabin's assassination in 1995, Ami was appointed at the head of the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security agency. In June of 2003, Ami launched, together with Palestinian professor Sari Nusseibeh, a peace initiative called The People's Voice. A former member of the Knesset, he was appointed as a minister without portfolio to the Ehud Barak government in September 2007. Friendly Fire, his new book, was published last year. Ami, it's a pleasure to talk with you today. The book's subtitle, How Israel Became Its Own Worst Enemy, is provocative, especially given how many enemies Israel does have. What do you mean by this subtitle?
I mean exactly what I wrote. Against all the other enemies, external enemies, we developed all kinds of tools in order to face them, in order to win them. But when it comes to us, to the Israeli resilience, or us as a society, we are losing the sense of partnership and being together. I have to remind myself, and I have to remind the audience, that next week we commemorate 26 years of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. We killed our prime minister. It was not a Muslim terrorist. He did not came from Iran. He served in the Israeli military, in the Israeli army. He studied in Bar-Ilan University, the same university that I finished my first and my second degree. By the way, you know, I finished my second degree in law studies in the same university after assassination. And every time when I was sitting in the auditorium, I was thinking, on this chair, the assassin of Rabin was sitting several years ago. So we are losing even the idea of what is right and what is wrong. You see it every day. We had an event in which an Israeli soldier killed a terrorist. He was unarmed. He did not present any kind of danger. All the generals, the general staff, was sure that it was totally wrong, but 73% of the Israeli people believe that he is a hero. So we are losing the sense of justice, what is right, what is wrong, what is allowed, what is not allowed. And this is the hugest, the biggest, the most serious threat that we are facing.
I mean, much of the book, which is part of memoir, part of analysis of Israel's society, is about the proper response to terror. You write at one point, the more we employed our vast military superiority to pound the Palestinian population, the more Hamas grew in strength. Maybe you could explain why that was the case.
That my enemies are not targets, are not military targets. They are human beings. Now it's obvious for everybody, but for us, people who spend, I don't know, 30, 40 years in military uniform, And I repeat myself, I'm not proud of it, but I killed many people in too many wars. And this is what we learned to do. When you people, when our leaders sent us to fight, to war, to battles, we are not negotiating. We are killing our enemy. And for the first time, I met people that were in our jail during the first Intifada. They were terrorists. And I meet them and I see them and I speak with them and they became my friends. Jibril Rajoub, he was a commander of the Palestinian Security Organization in the West Bank. He visited my house, I visited his house. And I learned that, that all what we are looking for is for a better reality. And second, I learned that if we do not create a political horizon, or in other words, if our enemy has nothing to lose, I can do nothing against it. The whole concept of deterrence is I can take something from you that is very, very important for you. But if you don't think that you have something, if you don't think that there is nothing that I can use against you, and in a way, when you try to analyze from the military point of view, what happened during the Second Intifada, when hundreds of Palestinians tried to commit suicide, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinian youngsters saw the suicide bomber as a hero, as a shaheed. So the only way that we can try to achieve a better reality, or in other words, the only way to win terror is to make sure that they will have something to lose, or hope is something that I can take from them. So it is a precondition. They have to see a political horizon. They have to have hope. Otherwise, we cannot win terror.
I mean, how did you balance the necessities of action as director of Shin Bet with that perspective, as you were charged with the day-to-day security of Israelis?
Well, first of all, it was a totally different reality. I mean, at least our governments were negotiating, and the idea was to create, to achieve together, as a result of negotiations, a better future for both people. And in a way, we fought against terror, all of us. I remind myself, and it is very, very important to remind all of us. I'm going back to Rabin. We faced Jewish terrorism, and we faced a Muslim Palestinian terrorism. I do not compare it, but finally, we felt that it is our task on both sides to make sure that terror will be reduced. And we used to, in order to give the illustration that we are the bridge for our political leaders to march on, to step on the bridge that we are creating. The bridge is security. If we shall not achieve security, if Israelis and Palestinians will not feel that this road brings them to a better future, our politicians, our political leaders will not have, not the courage, will not have the ability to go forward. And this is why during this almost 4.5 years, we fought terror together, we cooperated. We exchanged information. There were several cases, and I explain it in my book, that our people from the Shin Bet joined the Palestinian security organizations, and in order to chase, in order to get Palestinian terrorists. And the debate or discussion was where they will be interrogated, in our jail or in their jail. But it was clear that we shall exchange information because it was in the interest of both sides. So in a way, it was a daily issue. Yes, it was difficult in the beginning because I believe that for they people, they used to see us as enemies. We used to see Arafat and all his people. But it was, in a way, I remember the time when I even wrote it in the book. Rabin asked me when I was still the commander of the Israeli Navy to cut short my term after 3 years of discussions when he approved the big submarines. And he said, okay, you have your submarines, and I would like you to cut short your term and then to become the director of the Israeli Shin Bet. And I refused. But what he had in mind, he was sure that we have to change the attitude against the Palestinians. And it is almost impossible to do it if you do not change the position or the personality of the director. So for me, it was relatively easy. But I think that in both sides, we achieved a kind of trust between our two organizations.
I mean, at one point in the book, you write, and I thought this was one of the most poignant passages, what most Palestinians sought more than anything wasn't our blood. They just wanted to trust that the Israeli government would end the occupation and allow them to be free, which is a kind of startlingly kind of non-political observation. It says nothing about one state, two states, boundaries, settlements, or anything else. Do you believe that's the general issue and then these are details to be negotiated, or are these other issues also of primary importance?
Well, it's very, very difficult to separate between the issues, but I would like to try to answer from a different direction. The major problem that we are facing in the Middle East is that we do not see each other, we do not recognize each other, and we do not understand each other. There are two conflicting narratives between Israelis and Palestinians. What really happened during the last 3,000 years, 2,000 years, 100 years, and even the last 15 years? Let's try to explain the last 20, 25 years. The Israeli narrative, and it is based on real facts. We are not totally wrong. What we are saying, look, all what we wanted, especially after the first Intifada, when we realized that occupation creates violence. All of us realized. All what we wanted was security. And we were ready to give, even to give you an independent state alongside the state of Israel. This is the way that we saw it. And all what we got was terror, violence, and intifada. So we feel cheated. We gave everything, and we got only violence and intifada. But there is another narrative, the Palestinian narrative. If you will ask the average Palestinian, he will tell you all what we wanted is to see the end of occupation. And by the way, the majority of the Palestinians at that time said that about 80% of them, when they was asked about the occupation, they said 67 borders, which is about 27 or 25% of Greater Palestine. The rest will stay in the Israeli hands. So all what we wanted was to see the end of occupation. And instead, what we got, more settlements, more settlers, more IDF, and less hope for an independent Palestinian state. And they are right as well. So the problem is that both sides are right. But the major problem, we do not see the Palestinian narrative. They do not see our narrative. And this is why, by the way, I decided to write the book in English and to start the debate in America, because it is too painful for Israelis. We are too close to the events. We are losing people. And probably when you see it from another planet, from America, you can be much more objective. And you can see that this war leading us to lose our identity. Because if we shall go on fighting this war, and if by coincidence we shall win, and our border will be on the Jordan, this is the end of Zionism. Israel will not be a Jewish democracy, because if we are not majority, we do not have the power, and we do not have the right to dictate the public space, the calendar, the language. So probably we have to hear it, not as from somebody who will dictate, I don't know, using military or economic power. No, from people who love Israel and want to identify with the concept of Jewish democracy.
I mean, perhaps nothing has turned a significant portion of the Israeli population against the two-state solution than the experience of Gaza, especially post-withdrawal. You were one of the proponents. Some people attribute much of Ariel Sharon's withdrawal from Gaza to you and other Shin Bet commanders. Israel did something almost unprecedented in human history, unilateral withdrawal from territory that it physically controlled. The results has been what we know over the last 16 years, wars, attacks, and the like. And threw into doubt for many Israelis that political concessions were viable. Looking at it now, and you were a key participant in the debates, what's your assessment of the Gaza withdrawal and the argument that this has produced skepticism about the impact of future concessions?
Yeah. Okay. I was lucky enough because I wrote exactly what I'm telling you now before the withdrawal from Gaza. And I was not in politics. I was not the director of the Israeli Shin Bet anymore. And yes, I supported separation or creation of a Palestinian state alongside Israel, and yes, all the leaders of Shabak, etc. And Sharon was influenced by what we said. But when he said, okay, we are leaving, we are pulling out of Gaza, I was very close to Sharon, and I met him in his farm, and I told him, Mr. Prime Minister, you are doing a huge mistake, a huge mistake. And he said, Ami, you are telling me for the last years you are traveling all over, persuading, etc., etc. I said, no. I think that we have to get out of Gaza, but not the way you are doing it. He said, okay, what do you want? He said, Arafat just died. Let's assume that he was an obstacle, and probably he was. But they just elected another president. They elected Abu Mazen. And Abu Mazen was the only Palestinian leader who, during the Second Intifada, had the courage to stand up against all the Palestinian leadership, against Hamas, against Fatah terrorists, telling them violence will bring us only more violence, humiliation, and the end of our dreams. So I said, he was elected now by 67 points of the votes. They are telling you something. They voted a person who is totally against violence. He is the only Palestinian leader who believes in diplomacy. You should call him to your farm. You should tell him, look, I'm talking to you because you understand that by using violence, you will get nothing. Instead, what you did it unilaterally, and in a way you do not understand Hamas. You know, it's unbelievable. We are speaking Hebrew, they are speaking Arabic. He said, what do you mean? I said, you do not understand that. What is the Palestinian narrative? If you will ask a Palestinian, he will tell you Israelis, Jews, they understand only power. And we can prove it. They came to Madrid because of orders that they got from President Bush. And then they left Lebanon because of Hezbollah and the suicide bombers. And then they are leaving Gaza because of Hamas and the Second Intifada. So they will believe more than they believe now that we really understand only the language of power. You have to teach them that we are speaking two languages. Yes, we know how to use violence. We are the most efficient and effective military organization in the Middle East. But this is not the point. We are speaking diplomacy when it is necessary. And instead, you are empowering the Palestinian and the Arab Muslim narrative that we understand only the language of power. And if you will ask the Palestinians what Israelis did in Gaza, they will tell you, look, they cheated everybody. They built in Gaza the hugest jail on earth, putting inside more than 2 million Palestinians. They created walls against us. They control the air, walls, and the sea. Nobody can get out. They control everything. Every piece of food they control. And they complain that we don't like it and that we are using violence. This is the Palestinian narrative. Why don't we see it?
Ami, while your critique often had you coded as in the peace camp or left-wing camp, you've also annoyed many people on the left by being very sympathetic to settlers. Notably, in your book, you talk about at length the people who were forcibly evicted from Gaza. How do you explain that many who otherwise share your critique of Israel's security policies don't have the same view of the settlers that you do?
No, because I think that the public debate in Israel is simplistic. I don't know. It's everything is so complicated. You know, I was born to settlers. My parents, when they came from Europe during the 30s, my father, illegal immigrant, and my mother, child to study in Jerusalem, their Zionist concept was a very, very simple idea. We are going to save the Jewish world, or the Jewish people, which is in a great danger, although most people do not understand it yet during the 30s, by building a future state for Jewish people in Israel. And wherever we shall build a settlement, work the land, and defend ourselves. So the concept was settlement and security. This was my concept. By the way, after the 6-day war, my friends from the labor movement, from my kibbutz, they went to the Jordan Valley, to the Golan Heights, and to Yamit, to Sinai. We created the settlement. It was not an idea of Gush Emunim or the people from the right. I am not a settler only because this was a moment in which I decided that I will stay in the Israeli Navy SEALs because it was necessary, because all our borders became wet, the Suez Canal, etc., etc. So settlers are my people. My friends from my kibbutz are still living in the Jordan Valley. Many of them were evacuated from Sinai. I saw the pain. I cannot hate them. We sent them. They were our pioneers, and they were sent by all the Israeli governments, Labor, Likud, Meretz, all of them. But we achieved victory. When people ask me when, somewhere between 88 and 2002, in 2002, in 88, by the way, Palestinian Declaration of Independence, they accept Israel along the lines of 67. They accept all international resolutions, meaning Israel will be a Jewish state and Palestine will be an Arab state. They write it in their Declaration of Independence. In 2002, all the Arab world, all the Arab League, and later all the Muslim world accepted what we call the Arab Peace Plan. Israel as a legitimate state in the Middle East along the lines of 67, a change of territories. The right of return will be discussed and negotiated between the two states. So if Ben-Gurion would get out from his grave, he will tell you the Messiah is coming today. Because we won. The essence of victory in war is to create a better reality. This is the reality that our parents dreamed of. Because after the Six-Day War, when all the Arab states in Khartoum, they said no to peace, no to negotiation, and no to recognition. They changed the way they were defeated. And they said, in a way, they're saying, well, we lost. We recognize you. We shall sign peace agreement with you. And we do not see it. Until today, the Arab peace plan was not discussed in any of our governments. It's unbelievable.
On the last page, or maybe the second to last page of the book, you write about your vision of Zionism, and I just want to read an excerpt. I want to show Israelis and Jews outside Israel that we can choose a different past. The past that my parents chose brought about the establishment of the state, but today it stands in the way of the future they dreamed of, a democratic state for the Jewish people. We don't have to continue seeing ourselves as a nation of ghosts who only return to life by reclaiming a land that had been inherently Jewish since the time of Joshua. We can, and I would argue we must, see Zionist history as a struggle for national self-determination. What do you mean, especially that last sentence, seeing Zionism as a struggle for national self-determination? And how is it different from the narrative that guides Israel today?
Later I go on, and in a way I say something that I did not invent. I even quote, I think, a writer from the 30s, anyhow, George Orwell. In order to control the present, you have to control, in order to control the future, you have to control the past. In order to control the past, you have to control the present. What I'm saying, the narrative of my parents was based on the idea that this land is ours. And yes, this land is ours. But when I met Professor Sainu Seba, the first question that he asked me, tell me something about your past. And in a way, my parents, in order to create this Zionist revolution, they erased their past. By the way, my father, he came to his father when he was 13, 14 years old. And he said, Pa, they were very, very religious family. He said, Pa, I'm not Jewish anymore. I'm Hebrew. Jews speak Yiddish, and I will speak Hebrew. I'm saying it because in a way they erased 2,000 years of history, and they went back to the kingdom of David. Our heroes were heroes that were erased during 2,000 years. Samson is not mentioned in the Mishnah, in the Talmud. Bar Kokhba, in a way, he was seen as a traitor, as a person who created a reality in which we found ourselves in the diaspora. And they, in a way, created new heroes. What I'm saying is, when I met Sinus Seba, I said, okay, I can tell you the history of the Hebrews, but I belong to a generation that did not have grandparents. All of them were assassinated during the Holocaust. So I don't really know my private, personal history. My parents didn't speak about it. And he started to tell his history. His family tree started during the 7th century, the time of Muhammad in Jerusalem. And until today, the Nusayba family, they hold the key of the Holy Church. So can I come to him telling him this land is mine and not yours? So all what I'm saying, we have to accept the idea that yes, this land is ours, but it is not only ours. And we have only two options: to live together and to lose our identity as Jews. And since Judaism and Islam did not separate between nationalism and religion, to go on fighting, killing each other like in Lebanon or in Syria, or to divide this piece of land. The only way for us to keep our security and our identity is to accept the idea that this land is ours, but it is not only ours. So we have to go back into the past in order to create a new future. This is what I'm saying.
Why wasn't Camp David seen as the political horizon during the Second Intifada?
Well, there are several versions of what happened in Camp David. It's not very important because I was not there. By the way, Ehud Barak asked me to come, and I told him I'm not going to come because I didn't think that he can achieve something. I think that and I'm writing about it in my book, we lost our Palestinian partner several months before Camp David. Camp David was a failure before the first day because our partner knew nothing about what he will be offered. I think that even within the Israeli mission, we or most people didn't know exactly what will be discussed. And we have to understand that to touch the most sensitive nerves of the conflict is Jerusalem and the right of return. To put Jerusalem on the table, you have to be very, very, I don't know, not clever, in order to think that Arafat has the right to give Jerusalem. Jerusalem does not belong to the Palestinians. Jerusalem, by the way, the forces that are responsible in the Muslim world are the King of Jordan, the King of Morocco, and the King of Saudi Arabia. Arafat can say nothing about it without the permission of all these people. So to bring him to Camp David, to put it on the table, it's not something that can be, especially when they came to Camp David, Arafat did not believe to any word of Ehud Barak, because Ehud gave his promises that he could not fulfill, and vice versa. Ehud did not believe to any word of Arafat. So this is not the basis for negotiations.
Ami, thank you so much. Ami Ayalon is the author of Friendly Fire, How Israel Became Its Own Worst Enemy and the Hope for Its Future.